Welcome back. What I'm going to tell you next is nasty. So, we've been talking and advocating to eat cleaner. The idea is eat healthier. But I read an article from CNN yesterday that makes it pretty clear it's going to be a lot harder than I imagined to really shift our diet and eat really cleanly. And that's thanks to the FDA. No, not the FDA Food and Drug Administration, but actually something that came out of that FDA called the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act. So that's a different FDA. And that stands for Food Defect Action Levels, which identifies amounts of natural and unavoidable contamination defects that present no health risks to humans. That's the regulation that identifies how many contaminants, like insect segments, bug parts, rodent hairs, rats and mice and others, even metal and glass shards, molds, things like that. How many parts of that can safely be in our food supply where they claim that there is no risk to human health? So here's the other thing that kind of makes me a little nervous, is that all of these recommendations are nothing but guidelines. They're unenforceable. So yes, if something is found to be grossly contaminated, there can be a recall. So always, always, always pay attention when you see a recall taking place. But this all relies on self-reporting and occasional spot checking. So how bad is it? Allow me to read a few. And again, this is from CNN. Berries, canned or frozen, average 4 or more larvae per 500 gram servings. Broccoli, average of 60 or more bugs, typically aphids and thrips and mites, per 100 grams, which is basically a single serving. The beloved Hershey bar. We have these around for s'mores. Not only is there some delicious chocolate in here, that delicious chocolate by the FDA levels is allowed to have 25 fragments of insects in this single bar. Prepared rice. This is a single serving of white rice. It measures just over 200 grams, so by FDA regulation, this single serving is allowed to have 150 insect segments and 2 or more rodent hairs. One of my favorites, peanut butter, is allowed to contain more than 400 insect fragments and more than 13 rodent hairs. Coffee beans, average of 10% or more by count, are insect infested or show insect damage, and or one live insect in a 1 pound sample. Canned mushrooms might be the least healthy thing you can buy. 20 or more maggots of any size per 100 grams of drained mushrooms and liquid. Folks, this was frightening to read. Frightening to read. And I will post all of these plus a link to the CNN article in the description for this. So what do we do to keep ourselves safe? Well, for sure, you want to choose whole, unprocessed foods whenever possible. Why? Because processed foods are more likely to be contaminated than fresh foods. It's simple. So you want to be buying whole fruits, whole vegetables, meats, and then when you get them home, wash them thoroughly. You want to make sure that you are preparing them the right way and you are storing them the right way also. You want to make sure that you are washing, chopping, and cooking them yourselves using smart techniques. Second of all, you want to make sure that even when you buy whole fruits and vegetables, inspect them. Look at them yourself before you put them in your cart. Because again, a lot of these inspections are just done visually. They're looking for macro contamination, not microscopic contamination. And again, when you buy whole fruits, make sure that you wash them once you get home. Greens and leafy vegetables need to be soaked. Give them a little shake. You want to make sure that you use a brush for things like apples or potatoes. And whenever possible, peel your fruits and vegetables before you eat them. Have you ever considered growing your own food? Even if it's a backyard garden or even in a windowsill. Again, controlling what you can control helps limit the opportunity for contaminants to get into your personal food supply. Start simple. Tomatoes are easier to grow at home than a lot of others, but start locally, start small, start simple, grow your own. Again, patios and windowsills make terrific gardens. Not for everything, but again, controlling what you can control. A simpler approach is to buy organic whenever possible. I know it's more expensive, but after reading this list, maybe it's worth giving up the Starbucks in the morning for safer food throughout the day. Perhaps, your choice. And think about buying at local, smaller farms. See where your food is sourced, right? Factory farms are more likely to use pesticides, as we discussed before, and they're more likely to have contamination either in the planting and harvesting or in the processing of the food. Local farms, smaller farms, tend to be open to using alternatives that may lower your risk of contamination. Think about shopping at a farmer's market, or consider a delivery service like we have available throughout many communities here in Florida. Now, this may seem like blasphemy, but you may also want to consider cooking your food at home and meal prepping rather than going out to restaurants. Keep in mind, in a restaurant, no matter how fancy or how expensive, you're not controlling what's going into your food supply there. And if you just go out to bars, keep this in mind. Canned fruit juices, citrus juices, right, that are used in screwdrivers, for instance. 5 or more fruit fly eggs and other fly eggs per 250 ml, or 1 or more maggots per 250 ml. So you bar flies, you're not out of the woods either. And then when you do have food, make sure that you not only wash it and prepare it, but store it properly. You want to make sure that you're using airtight containers. You want to refrigerate perishables quickly, and you want to make sure that you're checking expiration dates. And as an aside, also keep in mind that glass storage containers are safer than plastics. You've been, I'm sure, reading about microplastics. So glass is better than plastic. Finally, read labels, read articles like this, educate yourself, and know the risk factors. Maybe some of the most contaminated foods that we commonly use are ground spices, canned mushrooms, and frozen greens. They are far more likely to be carrying FDA approved or allowed filth. We want to avoid the highest risk products whenever possible. At the very least, choose brands that have a reputation for quality and don't have a reputation for recalls. And speaking of which, stay informed about safety recalls. Never, ever, ever ignore them. And when in doubt, throw it out. A bonus tip, you may want to consider getting your own spice grinder. Again, ground spices are far more likely to be contaminated than whole spices and seeds. So buy them whole and grind them at home. Grind them yourself. That reduces your chance of being exposed to these rodent hairs, insect fragments, and other contaminants. As always, pay attention. Get better informed. I'll try to bring you good information every single time we get together. And then keep in mind my big 3. Eat cleaner, move, and sleep. And when you feel like you're eating cleaner, then take an incremental step and try to eat even cleaner still. It's important that we take care of ourselves so that we can continue to take care of others. I'll see you again soon.